Oh, there we go.
Oh, perfect.
Okay,
Perfect. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Cory James, and I am the brand ambassador for Montelobos and Ancho Reyes. Over the past few months, Campari and Campari Academy have been very fortunate to partner with Portland Cocktail Week on Tuesdays and Thursdays to deliver distance learning with some amazing, talented individuals from around the country, one of which I will introduce to you momentarily. Today's distance learning course is sponsored by Ancho Reyes. Ancho Reyes is heavily inspired by old world spirits coming through a trade route starting at the Port of Veracruz, coming all the way through Puebla, where Ancho Reyes is made, all the way up to Mexico City. This particular spirit was born in 1920s Puebla, tracing all the way back to the Reyes family as being the first family to concoct this particular elixir. Ancho Reyes uses poblano chilies for verde, which is the fresh version of that chili, and ancho chilies for original, which is the dried version of that chili in its makeup. Poblano and ancho chilies are very important in Mexican cuisine, but more importantly, poblano cuisine and poblano history. Today, Liz is going to be taking us on a journey through the jungles of Costa Rica, which I'm very, very excited about, an extremely biodiverse area with local and indigenous flora and fauna, but also incredibly foreign flora and fauna that grow in the region due to the different microclimates in the area. Sustainability is also going to be a hot topic of discussion today, showing you how to get creative with what you have readily available instead of importing ingredients to your location. And much like what Liz is going to teach us today, the Reyes family had to get creative with what they had readily available to them to create this beautiful spirit that we know as Ancho Reyes today. So, which brings me to my special guest, or our special guest, Liz Furlong. Hi, Liz. How are you?
Hi, Cory. I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. Liz lives in Monteverde, Costa Rica in Central America, full-time. She owns her own bar, which, by the way, she is one of 3 female bar owners in Latin America, so she's paving the way. That is so exciting. She's Canadian-born, most recently living in New York City, and now the jungles of Costa Rica, and her love for sustainability in and around the bar is strong, and I can't wait to learn from her today. So any questions that you have for Liz, please throw them into the thread on the Facebook Live, and PDXCW will send these questions to me. And any questions you might have about Ancho Reyes, we can just hold those until the end, and I'll address them when Liz is done with her presentation. And also, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to follow us at Campari Community on Instagram, you can meet our team and also find out all kinds of cool stuff that we're doing now and in the future. But without further ado, Liz, I'm gonna hand it off to you. I'm excited to learn about all this cool stuff.
Thank you, Cory. Well, stay tuned, everyone, because I actually did a little bit of hunting this morning to see what kind of fun ingredients I could bring. So I'll be showing you those a little bit later on. But first, I kind of want to show you guys who I am and what my life is like and what it's like to bartend in Costa Rica. So let's just go over to my presentation. So we're going to be talking about bartending and sustainability in Latin America. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot them over about what the process is like and how you could also do the same thing, or any kind of questions about my take on sustainability. So on the next slide, please, Leo. This is me. I'm in my bar, Bebedero. So this is like one version of Liz, a bar owner and mixologist. I am in love with using whatever I can find in Costa Rica, especially in the jungle. And when I travel to other places as well as in Latin America, exploring new ingredients and seeing what I can come up with. So I'm going to take you into a little bit of that process, but here you can like imagine me in my, my normal day-to-day life here in the bar. And on the next slide, we can actually have a look at what Bebedero looks like, because I know not everyone's able to come to Costa Rica. I don't know when we're going to be opening it. We have a lot of restrictions right now, but at least you guys can get a feel of like the flavor of what it looks like and the style of the bar. So we're kind of like a speakeasy, dark, intimate vibe, because we're only a 32-seater. And the next slide is me in my favorite place to be. So this is me kind of deep in a hike in Monteverde, Costa Rica. So I'm, really into foraging. I'm really into exploring and really into getting out in nature, I guess I could say. So it wasn't maybe always like this. You know, as Cory said, I was originally living in New York City, and we don't have that much access to nature, I could say there. So when someone offered me this contract to go to Monteverde for only 3 months, I thought, you know, why not? It's November. I want to get out of here, and especially for those chilly winter months. So I was like, let's do it. Let's do it. So I went over to the Hotel Del Mar, and I basically fell in love with what Costa Rica has to offer. So can I have the next slide, please, Leo? These are some of the things that I saw when I was first visiting Costa Rica, you know. So I did see the area of Monteverde. This is over on the Caribbean coast, actually. So you'll see kind of a change in climate of although everything's very green, you'll get kind of a change in climate here and there. So this is a super cool area called Tortuguero, which has canals where you can take little boats to get to different hotels in the area. And I am so fortunate that I get to work with a lot of these places. They're my clients, and I get to kind of explore and go check out these areas. And that is not without its challenges. But I feel like the rewards are really wonderful because I get to use, that's a fresh hibiscus flower you're looking at there. Those are some lime leaves I've used to garnish that cocktail, which, you know, we're able to pick readily available and organically, although maybe not certified organic. They're definitely organically growing all over the place. So I feel really, I know, it's pretty cool. So I'm working with all these like cool, fun, fresh ingredients, which is the plus side. And then some of the kind of crazier things are, this is me, I had to zip line into one of my hotel clients that has like a bar area on a zip line platform. That was my view going into it. So imagine that was my trip to work that day. Pretty wild. And then on the property in all these different biodiverse regions in all over the country and all over the continent too, and explore. So we have some fresh amaranth there, some passiflora, and we whipped up that fun cocktail basically with all ingredients from the area, which I'll show you guys in a little bit. And I like to call what I do bartending in the jungle, because although sometimes I'm in a more urban area, we're still working with all these jungle ingredients, really. So my kind of mixology is tropicalized mixology, if you can call it that. And that just means adapting cocktails to life in the tropics, in the jungle, at the beach, wherever it may be that I'm working. Tropicalizing your cocktails, we're going to go over many examples of this, but why I think this is really important, that all of bartenders that are living in Latin America and neotropical regions, which are regions that are heavily biodiverse, which are from basically South Florida all the way down to right above Argentina. So that is a huge area with many different mountain ranges, volcanoes, jungles, and all of these different things that create microclimates. So we have access to an incredible amount of resources. So specifically speaking about where I am right now, which is the Monteverde Cloud Forest, we have in this one reserve, which is only 105 kilometers, which I also put in miles so that you guys could see, 65 miles only, square miles. We have 3,000 plant species, more being found every single day. So, and we have, I think, 600 tree species. And tree species, that means we have fruit trees, we have barks, we have roots, we have all these leaves, which are also, those are cocktail ingredients. Those are culinary ingredients, if I could say that. So just doing a comparison to another area, another really beautiful national park, you know, the Grand Canyon National Park, that is 3,060 miles. Okay, so we're talking quite a big difference of space, and we have like half basically of the plant species available, and only 200 tree species, so not a third of the tree species. So I just think, you know, when I realized all this that we had available, I was like, of course we have to be using these cocktail ingredients. Something that commonly happens here is bartenders seem to idolize what happens in the US and what happens in Europe, which are, you know, really great reference points to a really strong cocktail community, or we could even say a culinary community. But those are ingredients that we would often have to import. And it seems a little bit silly to be importing cranberries or a fruit that doesn't come from here when, you know, when I have, you know, dragon fruit readily available. I have, these are just some limes that are in season right now. So
look at how big those limes are, y'all.
Yeah.
That's like insane.
Yeah. So this is called, they call it messino here. I don't know. This is like, I think, standard lime for us, right? In North America, at least. This is a sour orange, but a really cool citrus ingredient that we can use. This one too I have, which is like it's like a key lime, I guess, but much bigger than what you would get in the US as well. And so, you know, there's 3 that I have here with me that are in season right now, but there are about 7 that are available throughout the year. So there's one that's called mandarin, which is a sweeter version. So even just if we're only talking about citrus, we have so many ingredients to play with. So I think that's really important that we take notice and take advantage of all these really cool things that we have to work with. I'm gonna go back over to my presentation too, Leo. So I want you guys to fall in love with Costa Rica. That's my goal, because
Done.
done, great. Cory's on board. Cory's my next visitor.
I'm moving there right now.
So Costa Rica, you know, if you are in love with the jungle, which is really hard to do, I think, if you haven't visited it, it's really hard for you to understand why it's important to conserve it, why conservation of a jungle is so important, you know? So that's what we're gonna work on right now. Step 2 of my mission here. So here's a little map of what Costa Rica looks like, with all the provinces in it, and then kind of like labeled, we're in between Nicaragua and Panama. And it's a tiny little country, right? Panama and Nicaragua are double our size, but what we have in the middle is a mountain range. So in that mountain range, there are many, many volcanoes. We have 7 active volcanoes, and there are more, you know, they're just not active in this moment. So you'll notice we're not an island. I don't know why, but some people think that Costa Rica is an island, and they'll have to say to me, island time and that sort of thing. But we're not an island, but we are in between the Pacific and the Caribbean. So we have like Atlantic Ocean access and Pacific Ocean access. So on top of having this like really beautiful mountain range and volcano activity, we are also receiving like these 2 climates that meet in the middle at this mountain range. So the Pacific and the Atlantic at this mountain range kind of collide, and that is where they create this like really cool cloud rainforest, which is where I live. And then throughout all the rest of that, you'll see, you know, in Guanacaste in the northern part near Nicaragua, that is more of a dry desert area. When you go to the south of the country, closer to Panama, you'll find like a really beautiful tropical rainforest, but it's not a cloud forest. So just all in those different climates, we're really lucky. You know, all of these climates basically means all kinds of different fruits, vegetables, trees can grow and modify to fit where they are. They adapt and they change how they look and how they adapt to the area. So that is why we are so lucky to have access to all, you know, those 7 different kinds of limes and citrus and all these fun things. Next slide, please, Leo. So let's talk about, how do you tropicalize your bartending? I think sometimes people ask me like, oh, so you do tiki, but like, you know, it's not tiki. This isn't tiki. This is like Latin America. This is kind of finding like the heart and soul of each country, or even each town or area that you're in, and finding out what the traditions are. that, you know, that Latin flavor of each of these communities, which I don't know if is seen that much in North America, and I don't think at all in Europe, or very minimally in Europe. You know, it's like, we know Mexico, and I guess you know Argentina, but do you know about all the other stuff that's going on? And I think sometimes Costa Rica being in the middle of that gets a little bit forgotten. So for me, like, I'm really pro highlighting what kind of stuff in the culture is going on, and those traditions and those like really delicious ingredients that I love working with. And then in turn, I feel like that brings in conservation. So that's me, you know, making people pay a little bit more attention to the products that they're purchasing in North America, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and just like bringing attention to the chefs and the bartenders and all these different kinds of community members in the gastronomy scene here. I'll have my next slide, please, Leo. Okay, so how did I incorporate this style into my bar program and cocktails? We're gonna look at some examples just to show you guys a bit about like how I took on this kind of challenge of, okay, I'm in Costa Rica. I have access to all this really cool stuff, but what am I gonna do with it now? So can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so my #1 mission was, how do I get to know Latin American ingredients? Foraging. That was a big step for me.
I think there's just a little bit of a delay. That's the reason why. So it takes just a second for you to see it. So I think if we go back one slide to that one, yep, and then we'll just, I think that's where you wanted to go, yeah?
Perfect, yeah, thank you. So if you're looking at this image in front of you, do you recognize any of these fruits, Cory, you specifically?
The little berries in the bowl look like, oh, I just had some of those the other day. They taste like tomatoes a little bit. I can't remember the name.
So, well, I think tomatillos is what you might be saying. I don't know. What are they called in English? I forget. But it's not that.
Okay.
So they're called golden berries. I've seen them called ground cherries as well, but it's not ground cherries. They're called golden berries, or chuva in Spanish, in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
They're super acidic and really delicious. So I love them, and they're readily available all over the country. And then what is being cut, that is called rose apple or water apple. And that is an apple that it tastes like roses, basically.
Wow.
So, so uchuva or golden berry, that's available all throughout the year. But water apple or rose apple, that is only available for about 3 months. So, you know, coming in as a foreigner and trying to learn about this was pretty challenging. So what I started doing is foraging. And, you know, foraging, I don't know if it sounds a bit pretentious or whatever, but I just basically realized, like, I really need to know what's available and what season it's available and how I can have access to it. So that was my first step. I would say if you want to forage in a country that you're not familiar with what's available, and it's definitely a neotropical region, you need to take extra care. So I would say that you should get yourself a book, or 2 books, or 3 books.
Get yourself a book, people.
Yeah, you're gonna need some of these. So I mean, you know, we don't have internet while we're deep in the jungle usually, or we have kind of shady internet, as you guys are kind of having a glance at right now. But so things that you might think that you know what they are, you don't. So we're gonna look at some examples as we go through this presentation, but please buy the book in the area that you're in. Better if it's even more specific. But you know, generally, you know, tropical plants in Costa Rica, perfect. That was a good start for me. And then you can get as nerdy as you want. I recommend that you could also, if you are planning a trip to Costa Rica, or to a neotropical region, book yourself a guide. There are many, many, many courses available about herbalism, medicinal plants, or permaculture, and there are many guides that can take you deep into different regions and teach you about it. But you don't just want a nature guide, like, unless, of course, we all want to see some sloths or monkeys or whatever, but if we're specifically speaking about bartending in the jungle, we need to make sure that someone knows if you can eat it or not. That's usually my number one question. So make sure you have someone that knows.
I personally would like to bartend in the jungle with a sloth. So
yes.
if we can make that happen, that would be lovely.
I'm taking notes. We're planning your next trip. Don't worry. And then I recommend that you have a camera or your phone or something and somewhere to document your findings. So what has happened to me before is, maybe you don't want to bring out the book while you're hiking because you're really tired, so snap a picture of that. If you have a little book like this that you can take with you easily in like a backpack or something, you can jot down some notes and just say, I'm noticing these kind of colors and I found it in this area and I saw this bird eating this fruit from this tree or something like that. And then you can look it up after when you have a little bit more time and you're a little more comfortable. And then please, people, if you're going to do some foraging in the jungle, you need serious rain footwear and a serious rain jacket. Like, I need you to bring those things because you never know. Yeah, really cool that we have all these microclimates, but what does that mean? That means walking from my house to this closest store, which is about 10-minute walk or something. I could start out with sunny climate, and then it could be misting, and then it could be a total torrential downpour, and then by the time I come back to my house, it's sunny again. So you just need to really be prepared. So those are my jungle foraging 101 tips for you guys. And although every single day they're finding new plants and herbs and even species in the rainforest, they are also finding poisons. So please be aware, please follow these steps, and don't just assume it's an apple and eat it. So we're gonna have a look at a few examples here. This is called jaboncillo, and I put the species name there. I don't know how to pronounce that, but what I've learned is just because it's called something like this in Costa Rica doesn't mean that it's called the same thing. So it's very important to learn the species names, but I'm not a biologist, so there you go. If you guys want to look that up, go ahead. So jaboncillo is this really kind of funky pink and green thing that you can find all over Monteverde, and you can find it only for about 3 months that I've seen it, and that the season stopped I think in December, so it looks really funky, and I found out it was edible, which is exciting, but you can only eat the young buds, so that's the one that has not matured with like the green berry on it, and cook the leaves. So if you were just to hear that it's edible and I don't know what you might want to do with that, but here they kind of fry it up with eggs and that sort of thing. You could poison yourself potentially. So that's why it's really important to do your research before you actually try to consume something and put it in a cocktail. But that's a really funky looking plant. The apple of death.
When I saw this slide, when you sent this to me, this just made me laugh because just calling it the apple of death, I just thought was so funny. Literally, the apple of death.
But if you look at it, it looks like, it looks like a little crab apple or something. And I have a story about that. So we took a little trip down to the Osa Peninsula, which is the farthest south you can get in Costa Rica. And we went with a group of friends that were visiting, and there was a chef, and he was from Montreal, where I'm originally from, and he saw these apples on the beach, and he's like, "Oh, cool, crab apples," and took a bite. And we were like, "Oh, crab apples, delicious, great." And then one of our friends who was Costa Rican was like, "What are you guys doing?
Oh,
Do you have any idea what that is?" And we obviously didn't, you know, newly in Costa Rica and everything. So we Googled it, and what did we find? The apple of death. It's totally toxic. It can produce vomiting, and you can die, and it has happened.
No.
So we immediately had to get this young chef to a hospital just to make sure, and he was totally fine. He didn't have very much or anything like that. But you know, that's the difference between having fun and using experimental ingredients and things going wrong. Do you know what I mean? So don't do that.
Also, if you're eating a crab apple in the US, there's also something wrong there because crab apples taste like garbage.
Yeah,
They're not good.
Not good, not good. But we don't, here in Costa Rica, there's not very many apples. So I don't know if he was just excited that he saw an apple. I'm not really sure what was going on in his mind, but lesson learned. No?
Yeah, exactly.
And the next one I actually brought some. So this is called castor or ricin. I don't know if you guys have seen Breaking Bad, but there's a moment when they poison I don't remember all the characters' names, but they poison a guy's burrito with this plant. And here it is. So this isn't as mature as the one in that video because it starts out this green color. And like, check out.
They almost look like rambutan or
exactly.
A lot brighter, obviously, which to me says danger.
Exactly. So, I mean, you don't want to eat this. It's totally toxic. The seed, it can kill you. But you will also know that if I tell you it's also called castor, you'll know that castor oil is kind of a common ingredient that you can find. It's in like many cough syrups actually, and it's in many beauty products. So if you process it at the correct temperature, the oil, you can consume it. But if you were to think this funky little seed could be a cocktail garnish, you could kill someone. So, you know, here, have a good look, everyone.
Get your book.
Get your little cocktail, get your little foraging book.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, that's so scary.
But it's also cool once you do know what you can work with. It's really exciting to be able to kind of experiment. So I don't know, maybe you want to do some kind of jungle bartending in the US or in Europe or in Canada or wherever you're from. Maybe foraging isn't the way to go because maybe you live in a city. I am sure you can do some farm visits, which is another way that I really learned about what was in season and what was available. So really cool thing about visiting farms, especially if you don't know the area that well and you're just learning, is farmers basically know everything about what they're growing. So they will be able to tell you when it's in season. They'll be able to tell you if there's any additional products that have, maybe they're not what is being sold typically. So for example, a lime tree, lime leaves are totally edible and no one even asks for them, although they're really cool and fun garnish with like a lot of aroma that can be added onto your drink. Visiting a coffee farm for me was really exciting because okay, yes, coffee beans, very exciting, cool. It's nice to have them fresh and see how it's processed and all that kind of stuff. But did you know that the coffee cherries, which here is called the cascara, which is basically like the shell?
Oh, yeah.
Almost no one's asking for that. And if there isn't a demand, they're not often trying to sell that product. So, you know, that's something to think about. Like actually speaking with a farmer that knows their product, they're going to be able to give you a lot more information that you might not have originally known and might not have considered in using in your drinks, which for me is like another form of sustainability, right? Like we're often thinking like, let's use the whole mango or pineapple or whatever, but you know, we can by getting to know the source, I think we are also able to be sustainable in a different way with what we're purchasing, which is cool. And you're taking out the middleman as well, so you're not purchasing from a supplier. You're actually like doing something considerate and like improving the local economy. You know, dealing directly with a small farm, which is something we'll look at a little bit more too later on in the presentation. But I think, Okay, so you guys saw this photo a little bit earlier. So I have some amaranth in my hand. I have passion flower, passiflora, which is the flower from passion fruit. And then you can have a look at the cocktail where we have some amaranth leaves, and we have, which also kind of looks like castor, right? Can you tell a little bit? It has a similar
darker.
Yep, exactly. And you can see some fresh passion fruit seeds. So, I mean, basically what happened is I went with the intention of getting passion fruit at this farm, and realized that there are these beautiful flowers that, like, how cool are those, which can be used to make teas. They can be used, they can just be eaten straight, and they're like quite sweet and really interesting. And they are only available, you know, a few months before the passion fruit blooms. So we made up this cocktail based on the ingredients that I found on the farm, and we're gonna make it for you guys, which is fun.
Would you say that the flowers of the passion fruit plant taste a lot like the passion fruit itself, or does it have like a different bouquet of flavors?
I definitely think it has a different bouquet of flowers. They are much more floral. So if you went more to, like, not the rose family, but maybe like chamomile, if you've had like a chamomile tea, I would say it's more on that side of things. And have you had a fresh passion fruit? I mean,
I mean, I have had a passion fruit, just not the flower is what I mean. I just thought maybe the flower would have like some characteristics of the fruit itself too.
No, I mean, there's also, here in Costa Rica, I have seen 6 different kinds of passion flowers, which there's also another fruit that's called, it's called grenadine, but it's not like grenadine, the syrup that you might be used to seeing. It's like a sweet version of passion fruit, because a passion fruit normally is like very sour.
Yeah.
Although when you purchase kind of like a syrup or something, it's already sweetened up, but it's like basically just a shot of acidity, you know? So this other kind, grenadine, which is not like the syrup whatsoever. It's like a similar shape to, I'm sorry, I don't have a photo to show you, but you basically crack it open and it's white on the inside and it's already really sweet. So you can just eat it straight up and it's delicious. So those flowers taste more sweet, I guess, than what you would get from a normal passion fruit. But yes, there's more variety than you would have access to in California or in the US or something.
I had no idea there was more than one type of passion fruit, so.
I know. And they're beautiful, honestly. So, gonna whip up La Maldita really quickly. We are using some local rum. Can you guys see this well?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. All right. Local rum. I have some green ancho.
Ancho Reyes goes really, really well with like bright flavors. The tropical notes inside Ancho Reyes pair really well with tropical fruits and Costa Rican fare.
Absolutely. I was so excited when we started getting this product, Actually, we don't have the green. That's like my own personal stash, but we do have the other. They both are delicious. And then I made an amaranth shrub. So amaranth shrub, basically it was taking, you guys saw the dark purple leaf. Basically it was just taking those leaves, putting them in sugar and really doing like a maceration with the sugar to extract like all the interesting oils that come from amaranth, which you might know it as just a grain, because I feel like that's how it's most commonly sold. But they're, you know, these leaves are a great ingredient for salads. They actually give like a really nice flavor to a shrub. So I just mix that with a bit of like banana vinegar, and there you have it.
Did you make your own banana vinegar, or did you buy that?
It's really common here actually, because big surprise. So bananas grow readily here. Almost everyone has a tree at their house. I have a banana tree at my house, and when the bunch of bananas is ripe, you'll have 25 to 30 fresh bananas, and how much banana bread can one really eat? Not that much, as you learn. So what people end up doing is I mean, I do know how to make it, but I tend to just buy it. It's just like a really great way of processing all of those bananas and kind of making a product that you can use it long term, because it doesn't have a shelf life as vinegar.
Yeah.
So,
what was in that little dropper that you just put in there?
just some spiced bitters. So I used some things that we can get here. You could just use like a spiced Angostura or any kind of spiced bitters that you have access to, but I used black pepper, I used cinnamon, a little bit of vanilla, cardamom, because those are all things that we have access to all the time. So fresh passion fruit juice, really pretty color. And give it a little shake. I'm sitting, so.
It's a little difficult to shake a cocktail when you're sitting. It's her first time, guys. Just kidding. That looks beautiful. Now I'm thirsty. It's almost noon here, so we could have a drink.
Yes, it's earlier for you. It is 12:30 here, so. So this is an amaranth peel. I should have showed you it earlier, but that's what I used to make the shrub.
Ooh, it's a really beautiful purple color, like really beautiful.
Yeah, right? And then we're just gonna use these edible flowers.
And what kind of flowers are those?
These are what comes with arugula, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, because passion fruit's not in season right now, so I wanted to show you it, but you get the idea.
Of course.
So that's it. This is like it has a little spicy kick, but still very like green and fresh. And then that passion fruit just is such a nice tie-in with the spice. And I can't drink this right now, although I really want to.
You could if you want. You could. I would just be living vicariously through you, pretending like I'm also having one as well.
I wish I could send you one. I wish I could mail you one while we.
A very long boomerang.
But that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a cocktail that we basically made from a farm visit. I mean, the liquor, you can only go so far with to this day. Costa Rica has really strict liquor laws. So producing your own liquor, like if you wanted to start a distillery, it's illegal.
Oh.
Yes, for now, we'll see, because it was like that with craft beer and laws could change, but I know Colombia, they have a similar problem, and the indigenous cultures in Colombia make really, really interesting sugarcane products that they're not able to legally sell, which I think if you guys got a chance to try them, there's one that's called Vichy that I think is amazing. And you know, I think there's always people making their own moonshine everywhere you go, but
I mean, that's the whole thing behind mezcal as well. I mean, 500 and 600 years of mezcal production. So, and same with Ancho Reyes. When Ancho Reyes was made, you weren't able to legally sell it. People just had it, and it was mainly like drunk amongst like celebrations and times like weddings, things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe one day that will change. But for now, we have just a few kinds of rum and some different things like that, which are produced in Costa Rica legally. So we're going to talk about next something that is a hot topic for me and very, very important for sustainability in Latin America. Pineapple. People often tell me I buy pineapple from Costa Rica, so you know I'm supporting Costa Rica, and I want to say no. I mean, you can buy it, but can you first? I wanted to like kind of paint you guys a picture of what is going on with mass producing and mass farming in Costa Rica. So if we are mostly jungle and all this beautiful neotropical rainforest and all these different beautiful microclimates that I'm telling you about, if we're farming pineapple, that means we are destroying the rainforest to produce it. And if you are a huge producer, not to name any names, that might be making little cans of pineapple juice, imagine, and that, you know, that product is available all over the world. Imagine how much rainforest is being destroyed in that. And then when money gets involved in Latin America, oftentimes you can buy the permits that you might need and all the kinds of things that might make what you're doing seem okay, but it's often not. So they are often not paying correct. I'm saying often, but I'm saying that most of the big companies are not paying fair wages. They're not giving their employees proper equipment to protect themselves from the pesticides and different things that they might be using, like agrochemicals. And those agrochemicals, Costa Rica is one of 2 countries in Latin America that has drinkable tap water, which is amazing. But in many of these pineapple regions, the water has become undrinkable, which is really sad. So I'm not saying never use pineapple, but if you are going to use pineapple, you know, doing something like our farm visits that we're talking about, or, you know, actually going to a farm, maybe you're in Florida or somewhere where you have access to pineapple farms, like having a look into it, having a look in what their sustainability practices are. You know, that would be great. If you could visit the farm, that would be perfect. Look for a locally grown version of that product, you know, like maybe, yeah, Costa Rica has awesome pineapple, but maybe look if there's something available in your area that you could substitute for. And if you can't, is there a way that you could substitute that fruit? Is there a way that you could, you know, if you were looking for that really beautiful sweet flavor of like a very ripe pineapple, could you do a mango instead, or something like that? And maybe you do that half of the year, or maybe you know, have a seasonal menu so you have pineapples sometimes, and just be conscious that that the higher the demand is for a tropical fruit, the more money is involved in making that a business. So, you know.
We do have a couple questions here, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
What is the difference working in Costa Rica versus North America, and was it tough to get a visa?
You know what? The Canadian visa is quite easy to get if you're under 35. There's a 1-year program that can be extended to 2 years. Mm-hmm. So that's something that Canadians could think of. But the US, it's actually not that hard to get a visa, because I also had to get a visa for the US, and that was quite the process. But you need to get a sponsor to do it initially. So you would have to get a company that could bring you, which is pretty easy. If you're a native English speaker, they often need help in hotels with certain responsibilities, for example. But I would definitely say check in with a hotel. You know, if you wanted to live in Costa Rica, I could probably help you out. Yeah. But check in with hotels, because they usually have a little bit more flexibility for bringing foreigners in. Yeah. And then otherwise, you can start your own business quite easily in many countries in Latin America. So that would just mean doing a little bit of paperwork, which is a little bit easier if you speak Spanish. So that might be challenging, but owning your own business and investing in Costa Rica are 2 pretty good ways of you having like a legal status. Yeah. There are many people who just do border hops and live here 3 months and go visit Nicaragua, which is really close, in Panama. But obviously with the current state, it's a little bit more complicated to be doing a border hop, so I wouldn't recommend that.
And then another question we have is there any ingredients that you miss or that you can't get? Like when you were bartending in New York or Canada, any ingredients in Costa Rica that you miss that you can't get?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, importation is not the same here as it might be for the US. So, I mean, you know, I'm going from bartending in New York and having all this access to like amazing bourbons and all these spirits that we don't really get down here. And even mezcal can be really hard to get down here, although we're so close to Mexico, which is interesting. Yeah. We actually just got Montelobos like last year. So yeah, it's here and we're really enjoying it. I'm really happy. But so spirits, definitely. If we wanted to talk about like fruits or other things like that, I miss apples so much. There is the apple of death, but that just won't cut it. And they do have local apples, but I just feel like in North America, you have like a really big range of flavors that you can get from apples, which is exciting.
Yeah.
And strawberries, we do have strawberries as well, but I just feel like there's something of like cold climate, like Canadian strawberries in summer are so delicious, and here I just feel like they don't have that same sweetness, which is, you know, they're here, but they're not my favorite. Do you have any other questions or?
No. Those are the only two that have popped through. So please continue with this really interesting pineapple stuff. I just wanted to pop those in before.
Oh, no, perfect. Just like while we're on that subject of kind of the pineapple and like how farming and tropical fruits are also an industry, I wanted to like throw in there that there are some smaller businesses that like take great care. There's one that's called Miami Fruit, for example, that take great care in like purchasing organic fruits and shipping them, organic tropical fruits, I should say, and shipping them to the US and Canada. So have a look for a company like that. I mean, it may be more expensive, but at least you know that you're using your buying power in a way that is helpful, you know? And I wanted to show you guys this mango. And I mean, when I'm showing it to you, this isn't something that you would see, I guess, in your supermarket, right? You would see like a perfect mango. But here, if I was to cut this open, it would be like deliciously ripe and so wonderful. But I guess we are, basically the supermarkets are now demanding that things come perfectly. Like they should have no brown spots. There should be kind of no imperfections. And they're like rejecting these fruits. So that is what the standard has become for like a tropical fruit farmer, for example. So, you know, maybe if you are interested in doing something different for your bar, like we shouldn't really care what it looks like on the outside. We should care about the quality of the fruit. Maybe you could talk to your fruit provider and speak to them and say, you know, I don't really care how it looks because we're making a juice out of this. So, you know, just a few little tips on how you can be a sustainable jungle bartender or bartender of the jungle in wherever you're from, you know. And we're going to talk a little bit now about using traditional recipes. So, I mean, can I have the next slide, Leah, please? So here, again, we're going to go back to our map of Costa Rica. And I was telling you guys a little bit about the microclimates with this map before. So all of those different microclimates in the map, there are different ingredients available, and therefore different regions create their own different traditional recipes. That makes perfect sense, I think, right? So you'll see in the northern part of the country, there's palm wine. We're going to go into each one of these ingredients so you guys can have a little look at what it looks like. So there's palm wine in the Central Valley, which is where that mountain range is. You'll see coffee and other ingredients that basically grow better with higher altitudes and cooler temperatures. Both sides of the country have chicha, which I'll elaborate on a little bit, and then some flower and herb infusions, and agua de sapo, which is kind of like a ginger beer. And we'll start with that one. Just wanted to give you like a little visual of where it's from. So agua de sapo, it's called, is a Caribbean side of Costa Rica thing. You almost don't find it if you're on the Pacific coast at all, but I can't think of anything more delicious to drink when you're by the Caribbean Sea, you know, on a beautiful white sand beach to sip on. So how they make it is basically water, grated ginger, local lime juice. So just to like give you a little visual of which one that is. That's this guy.
The big giant lime.
Yeah. And something that we call in Costa Rica tapa de dulce, but that is basically an unrefined sugarcane, which is a big block of, it's kind of like molasses, I guess you could say, but it comes in a big block and you can grate it and then melt it into sugar.
Wow.
So that's like just a really delicious, like sweet, spicy drink that you can have like without alcohol, and it's readily available, and that's a traditional recipe. So as I started learning more about what was available in each area, I was like, how can I use this? Like, why are we using ginger beer? Like, why am I importing ginger beer? you know?
Exactly.
If this is a traditional recipe in the Caribbean that people know and love, and can really kind of convert people over to being cocktail lovers. And can I have the next slide, please? Chicha. So chicha, I don't know if you guys know about it, but it's basically like a fermented product. It's really traditional in Peru, and it's like an indigenous beverage, I would say. So, you know, every country kind of has their own version. Nicaragua has it as well. Panama has it as well. Peru has it as well. But our version of chicha basically comes from the tropical fruits. So indigenous communities might ferment pineapple. So it might be like a tepache in Mexico, if anyone's had that. We have a fruit that's called a peach palm fruit, which is a sweet potato vibe, if you wanted to say that, which can get fermented up and is an interesting ingredient. Banana chicha, I think, is delicious and really cool. And I mean, the list goes on. So I don't know what rumors you might have heard about chicha, but in Costa Rica, from what I've seen in indigenous communities, no one is like chewing it or anything like that, the ingredients. They're just, you know, blending it or crushing them, fermenting them with natural yeasts. And if they need to add sugar, depending on the level of sugar that's in the fruit, that's what they do. So that's like a very, very traditional indigenous ingredient, which I think is actually really cool and delicious when it's well prepared. So I think chicha maybe in, you know, San Jose or a modern Costa Rican city isn't that popular of an item, but we can have a look at the culture and see how that has been transformed. So chicha kind of has a little similar ring to this ingredient called chinchibí.
I have a quick question for you, Liz, if you don't
Sure.
mind, before we move into this next slide. Somebody would like to know, are there any certifications for farming or farmers that you see having a good impact on Costa Rica?
There is fair trade, which is really important. And there's Rainforest Alliance, which are two big ones. I just think that something that happens sometimes is that those certifications cost a lot of money. And if you're a farmer in a really remote region, you might not have access to that.
No.
So, you know, maybe if, you know, you meet someone who might be working in that sort of industry, you could mention that, like, is there a way that there could be like a co-op for many small farms to purchase this kind of certification together? Because it is really easy to get organic fruits and vegetables here, as chemicals cost money. So if, you know, if this is such a fertile environment, we don't need those chemicals to grow them, actually. But yes, those are some I know. So like the Fair Trade and Rainforest Alliance, those are some that you could check out. There is one here, I don't know if they're importing to the US, but there's one that's called the Blue Zone that you could also look into as well. Those are the ones I know. But organic, I guess organic is something that is an important ingredient to look for. Even with your citrus, I know it can be pricey, but maybe that could, we'll get into like the substitutions and some recommendations and stuff a little bit later on.
Cool.
So, okay. So chinchibí, that's what this is called. So thinking back to like this kind of fermented pineapple drink, chinchibí is something that's I've only ever seen in this little town called La Abuelita. And if you look at this kind of beautiful painted stand here, you can kind of understand what La Abuelita looks like. Again, beautiful mountain range, really small little houses, very, very traditional. And this is, they've basically taken like a beer keg and fermented with some natural yeast, some pineapple, some spices, and they often put a little bit of corn in it to give it a little more body. And then because it's in this keg, we'll see on the next slide. Yeah, perfect. It has this beautiful texture. Like it's just so rich and delicious, you know, and that fermentation, if you're a person that likes like homemade ginger beer or kombuchas or something like that, I think this is a really cool ingredient to use in cocktails. And because it's already in kegs, if you can get this for your bar if you're in Costa Rica. But I also like the idea of making your own style of ginger beer and kind of playing, you know, taking out the ginger and using like local fruits or something like that. So at the bar, we did a cocktail with chinchilli for a bit. We basically took the chinchilli and we threw in some turmeric because turmeric's readily available. So that gave it this like really awesome, strong yellow color that you can see here. We used some bourbon and Campari, and then we just added a little bit of tamarind liqueur. So tamarind is a fruit that is readily available here, and we just threw that into a little bit of a neutral spirit, and then like added sugar as we needed, and that's kind of like a fun alternative to, you know, just using some orange liqueur or something like that, you know, kind of a fun way to go about it. So that was a delicious cocktail, and that was just kind of my way of using some traditional stuff to, you know, to make something new and fun.
Yeah. I have another question for you, which actually was something that I wanted to ask too. Aside from those limes being really large, do they have like a different flavor in Costa Rica than they do in the US? I would imagine yes.
Yes. Absolutely. So that's something important to mention. When I originally came down here, you know, I have all these recipes in my head, but I realized I had to adjust them because the limes are so much stronger. So, you know, that recipe that you might have thought was like perfect, your most amazing margarita for your whole life, you kind of have to adjust things to fit with like the fruits that are available here. And then, you know, I'm telling you, there's about 7 kinds available. So there's one that is really, really sweet. The mandarin one, I would say. So even on the outside, it might be the same color, but the fruit that's on the inside is much sweeter. Like you could bite into it and it wouldn't bother you.
Oh, wow. That sounds lovely.
And the sour orange, which is, you know, an orange, but so sour that I would almost say you could substitute it for.
I was going to ask when you were talking about the sour orange earlier, if you could use that as a hard citrus, and it sounds like you probably could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
All right. Vino de Coyol. This is our palm wine. So this is really common all throughout Central America. If you go to the beach, drive to the beach in any kind of Central American town that might be on the Pacific coast, you're going to see a little handmade sign like this, and you might be curious about what you would be getting. So I included a little photo there. So it's just this palm wine in a little bottle, usually like a recycled bottle is what they'll give you. And how we get it is really cool, I think. There's a certain palm tree, depends on the area, right? And the farmer basically is going to make a hole in it, dig out a little space, and let that like palm juice, we'll call it, gather and ferment naturally. And then it's a really strong kick that you get from that palm wine. There's all these kind of cute little stories of, you know, people, I don't know, getting getting drunk off it and then, you know, falling asleep under the palm trees and like those kind of silly little stories of finding like vino de coyol, as they call it, or the palm wine. And so I don't know, I feel like in Costa Rica there's kind of this like, I don't know about that stuff. But if you actually take the time to go out and like meet traditional producers of something like this vino de coyol or palm wine, and you know, take the time to find the good stuff, it's delicious. It's like a coconut kombucha or something.
Well, I'm into that.
Yeah, really tasty. So I would recommend it. It's worth it. In the next slide, there's a photo of a cocktail that we did with it where we like replaced We just like basically replaced sparkling wine for like a mimosa type thing with that, and it was a big hit. Really easy and refreshing and delicious. So
What is the alcohol content on something like that after it's fermented in the tree there?
as it's pretty traditional, I would say it's
Probably
hard to measure, but I would say it's more like in 12 and 18%.
Okay.
And then, you know, if you let it ferment a little longer, it gets a little funkier and a little harsher, and maybe you don't want to go into that range.
More fun or less fun,
True.
depends.
I don't know. And so in another really traditional ingredient that you can find, I mean, we always say we don't have wine in Costa Rica, but we have fruit wines, you know, which is basically a fermentation of different fruits. So the golden berry that I talked to you about is a common thing that you might find to be fermented into a fruit wine. But honestly, we have so much fruit, you just have to kind of be conscious of the sugar levels when you're kind of experimenting with a fruit wine. But I think that's a fun ingredient that you can do yourself and have a really interesting ingredient to add to your cocktails.
Yeah, I remember the name of it. That's that little golden berry. We call them gooseberries here.
Yes, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah, they look almost the same, and that's what I was trying to remember. I'm like, I know it starts with an E.
Yes. No. And gooseberries are good. It's similar, you know. I think they come with that kind of like little paper basket or however you would want to call it, like with the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and fruit wines we talked about, and then mead. Mead is a really traditional ingredient that some people are really getting creative with here. This is a Costa Rican company. It's called Costa Rica Meadery, and they do like a espumoso version, so that has gas in it, and it's kind of like beer vibes. And they also do a flat version with like sugar into it, which I found to be like a really interesting substitute for vermouths. Using, you can see here, the passion fruit mead. So they are combining our cool tropical fruits with honey and coming up with these different products, which are really fun.
That sounds delicious.
It's great. Yeah. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. How else? So visiting markets, that's another thing that was really important for me to just kind of get in the headspace of what kind of products I have access to. So have a look. This is a Latin American market, okay, guys? Like all kinds of like handwritten signs, pretty chaotic. It's not like a perfect farmer's market that you might find at home. You have to, you know, come ready for crowds and bring your own bags and have a lot of patience, basically. But it's also a really cool experience and a really great way to learn about products. So you're gonna have a look in the center of this picture and you'll see something that's called marañón. That is cashew fruit. So that green seed that's on the top, you need to roast that seed, break it open. It's toxic if you don't roast it. One of those fun little jungle things that you need to know. You roast that up and that's where you get the cashew seed. But imagine, like, have you ever seen a cashew fruit for sale? I'm not sure. I didn't see one in North America ever. So that fruit is, when it's readily in season, you can also get that fruit that's left over and, you know, process it. Usually people boil it and they make a juice out of it, just traditionally, but it's a cool ingredient.
It almost looks like a chili. Do they tend to be sweet, or are they more like on the bitter side? Like, what's the flavor of the actual fruit there?
It's really interesting to explain, but it's kind of astringent.
I see.
It's sweet, but when you take a bite of it, you almost, like, you would expect it to be juicier because it's quite soft, but it's something else.
Yeah. It's okay. Got it. Interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, to take away the astringency, what I've learned is that's why there's that boiling process, because you can just, it makes it a little more of like a nice sweet product that you can have for a cocktail or just on its own. And yeah, just, going into the markets, that for me was super helpful. All those guys know when everything's in season. They know when it's going to be available. And again, they're going to know those ingredients that you haven't used before. There's a mango beside the cashew fruit, which looks pretty different from this mango that's in season right now, right? And they call it mango papa, like potato mango, because you'll see it's about half the size.
Yeah.
A little bit different, but you know, those are all really interesting fruits that we have access to, and we should take advantage of, I think. I'll have my next slide, please. So in these markets, you will get to explore natural medicine very readily, because you'll just see these markets are really chaotic, and they'll just be all kinds of dried herbs hanging up everywhere. And I just remember being like, what on earth is this? So, you know, you got to go in there. You kind of have to win the heart of the person, you know, or the salesperson, if they're going to be answering a bunch of questions, and they probably don't even think you're going to buy something, right? So you really have to like charm them and speak to them and get in touch with them. And the hope there is that you're going to learn about like traditional recipes that they use. And if you're into natural medicine, you are also into what is edible and what is not. So that was a really great resource for me, going in with lots of patience and kind of exploring these ingredients. And I have a few here that I can show you guys. So this is called, here they call it hombre grande, which is big man. That is obviously not the technical name. The name is Casima amarga. So this, you know, this looks like a tree branch, basically, that I'm showing you. They make bitters with this. You'll find that in the cantinas, they'll just stick this into a neutral liquor, and they'll use this as a hangover cure, because it's a really bitter flavor. You know, it's like great for digestion, which might be one of your symptoms for a hangover. So this is great for making some bitters, and really inexpensive and readily available.
What is the aroma on that? Can you smell it as a stick, or it has to be soaked?
Yeah, it has to be soaked. You can do it in water, you could do it in alcohol. I've seen it in honey as well, which is interesting. And then, oh, this one's crazy, so.
Get ready. Whoa.
So I first found this in a natural medicine stand in Central Market, and then I realized it's all over the country. So this is called Mucuna. It's often available in health food stores, but the kind that is available that I've seen in the US is much smaller, and it's like a different species. So this looks really crazy, and I don't think that anyone foraging would think you could eat this, but you can. It's a superfood.
As big as your head. It's insane. Those pods are insane.
I know. And I don't know if you guys can see, but they're prickly as well. They kind of have this fuzz on it that sticks right to your hand, so it's a bit wild. But just to show you really quickly, what you do with it is you break it open with some hardcore gloves, and you get these little seeds that you roast up, and then you can make a powder with it. So that's it's a superfood, really good for you. It's supposed to give you like a little endorphin rush because it has L-dopa in it. So it's often said that it's a natural ecstasy. So take it or leave it. That's what they say. Natural dopamine booster, and readily available all over the country. I picked that up on my way here today. So
very nice.
Yeah.
Natural, right?
Yes, exactly. And a fun, crazy ingredient that we have access to all over the place, basically. Okay, so back here to our photo of the Central Market. I'm just gonna like quickly kind of go over this because I feel like I had a lot more to say than I thought. But we're gonna talk about these flower infusions, which are really traditional in indigenous communities. So look at how beautiful these are. If you go to the indigenous communities on the Pacific coast, you'll find that they do these kind of preparations, and they're used for different things. Some are baths that might have some kind of, spiritual meaning behind them. Some are used as like an insecticide so that you can go into the jungle without being bitten. And others are just prepared, then the flowers are edible, so they prepare them in this kind of boiling way to drink it as a tea, for digestion, or the white one is called Flor de Ictavo, so Ictavo flower, and that one is totally edible. You can just chop it up and after you cook it and just eat it in basically a taco or something like that. Like that's how common and readily available it is. So I just think these are so beautiful. And I first found them. There's another picture that follows this one of.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. This is a flower called Madera Negra. So black wood is what it's called. And really short life for these flowers, but they collect them all and they make these beautiful baths out of them, for, more traditional reasons, but very fun cocktail ingredients for us to play around with. So I just think that's one of the, like a really lovely tradition from the indigenous cultures here. I'll have my next slide, please. So Central Market, traditional medicine, basically, that's like a really great place for you to get acquainted with these ingredients. If you're in Latin America, you can do these. Basically, these baths had inspired me to start doing these infusions more. Right? They're doing that. There must be something to that. So, looking into it, you can do these kind of medicinal infusions, which in the end are your cocktail ingredients with water, with alcohol, with honeys. And even vinegars. So that gives you kind of like a wide range of cocktail ingredients for you to play around with. This is one mix that we use for our Buena Vibra elixir in the bar. So we have some Costa Rican sage, which you'll see looks a little bit different than the Italian sage that we often get. This is a much wider leaf. Some fresh chamomile, which is a really common ingredient. Some mint that isn't looking too hot in that picture, but you get the idea. Just some spearmint. And a little bit of Palo Santo, which is, kind of similar to the Hombre Grande bark or stick that I was showing you. It's another readily available ingredient for us. So just doing a nice infusion with that, and we have our kind of I like to call our elixirs. So that's something that we are just preparing in the bar because we don't have access to all the cool ingredients, all the cool liquors that you have. So this was kind of like my way of making a substitute for that, which I kind of feel like that's the story behind Ancho Reyes too, right? Like,
yeah, again, I was just going to say, it's so important. Like, first of all, as a bartender, utilizing all the ingredients that are around you instead of trying to reach further for other things that you can't get, which is basically what you're doing. But it's so good for your education too, as you move throughout your career to like utilize different ingredients. That's exactly what the Reyes family did. They were like, well, shit, we need to just use what is right here. And Poblanos translates to a Puebla. And they're like, well, why don't we just use what's so plentiful here? And I just think that it's so cool and so important, for sure.
Exactly. So, and that's, a big part of my take on sustainability. What can I use instead of importing something and make something interesting and creative. So that was how the elixirs of Bebedero are born. So our own infusions made with all these different beautiful ingredients from the jungle that we can always have access to. I'm going to show you guys really quickly a few like substitutions that I had to make because I just thought they were really important to keep with my concept. So cherries don't grow in Costa Rica, so we subbed them out for our uchuas, our golden berries, and you can process them exactly as you would a cherry. Throw them in a little brandy or whatever your recipe might be with some spices, and have that available to you as long as you need it. It's in this liquor, so it's totally ready for you. And what are you looking for when you need a cherry? You want that kind of tart sweetness. So that's one substitution we made. Hopefully that can inspire you to think of like other ways that you can use different fruits to replace ingredients that you don't have. And olives, those are like cherries and olives, like those are just things that you always need to have, right, in a bar. But if you're doing a kind of more farm to table experience, or they're expensive or they're not available to you, or you're in a remote location that it's really hard to get cherries and olives to, what else can we work on? So we did a trout caviar. Grilled insects. I don't know if you've seen this in Mexico, but the chapulines, the grasshoppers that are like kind of salted, that's like a great substitute for that like umami flavor of the olive on the martini, for example.
Real
And we also
nutty.
did, pardon me?
Real nutty.
Yes.
Real nutty on the plate.
And then leche de tigre, which is like we use a vegetarian ceviche, so that's kind of like the limey base that has also a lot of like umami flavors that you can like throw into a martini for your olive brine, for example. And I mean, yes, these are not the same ingredients. You might have to adjust your recipe a little bit. You might have to work on your vermouth or whatever, but you get the idea, I think, with that. And then sugarcane, I don't know why, but all rum producers, it seems like, are using one kind of sugarcane, but in Costa Rica, there are more than 20 kinds of sugarcane available. There is a sour sugarcane that has a really citrus flavor, which I think is really beautiful. And I think earlier when I mentioned to you that there are many liquor producers in Colombia they're local liquor producers, like basically illegally moonshine producing this sugarcane liquor called Viche, but they are really taking advantage of all these kinds of sugar canes and making really beautiful products. So I think that's something that I hope in the future many producers liquor producers will start to see a benefit of. And things that they could also do just to kind of have a little more sustainable approach to sugar cane or agave or what other Latin American spirit ingredient. How are the farmers resting the fields in between cycles? Are they doing something that's sustainable for the environment? Are they burning it and causing more pollution afterwards? Are the farmers maybe planting pollinator plants that are giving back to the production of the rainforest? Are they planting native plants that are, in between the sugarcane that will help instead of hurt the rainforest, basically? And how are they treating their workers, which is something I talked to you guys a little bit about with the pineapple. All these little steps that we can take as consumers of liquors and these products to just have a little more care with what we're doing. And then I mentioned seasonal menus. So, if you want to use pineapple, perfect, but maybe if it's too expensive, consider doing a seasonal menu that can always be changing. And that's like my number one easiest recommendation for everyone that's trying to, be a little more sustainable behind the bar. Change up that menu if you can. Take the pressure off those really important ingredients and use them sometimes, get creative, see what you can come up with. And then this is kind of my last point for sustainability, which is really important for me. I'm so lucky that I get to work with all these like wonderful locations all over the country and all over Central America. And sometimes South America, I'm going to these beautiful destinations, and then I realize like the bar industry and hospitality in general can be really damaging to the environment. So how can I use my community and use the tools that I have access to take care of the jungle and not just take ingredients from it, but also give something back? So I think I said it really well here in this quote. If working so closely with the jungle has taught me anything, it's that everything has a balance. All lives in the rainforest have to work together, and that's how I want to build my community. So, one species becoming extinct because they don't, because their pineapple fields, didn't allow them a habitat, or any pesticide that could be producing like a problem for the water source or anything like that, that affects a whole group of other animals and plants and all these different things. So for me, like, that was very impactful, and that is kind of what made me have this mentality. I'm so lucky to be here. How can I do my part? So community, I think, is really important. We started purchasing our glassware from local artisans whenever possible. This is something a little more traditional, like Costa Rica style, and even Mexico, all over Central America, you can find like beautiful ceramic pieces. But we also have pieces that are from indigenous communities, which is amazing because they do some just beautiful stuff. Oh, I thought I had one, but anyways, you have a photo here so you can have a look at it. But yeah, they're just these beautiful clay pieces that are really interesting. And what we did for this was for a specific hotel that was beside an indigenous community. So these people were having to leave their community, you know, to go find jobs outside because no one was buying their products. So what we did is, you know, we made them available to purchase with your cocktail. So that was creating a new job for that community and like giving back. You know, we're not just going to be here and take advantage. We want to see how we can work together with the community. We also started purchasing chichas, like my favorite banana chicha. We started buying from them so that we could serve it as a chicha sampler so that people could have a better understanding of like indigenous communities and what they were working on, and, you know, a little bit more of like what are the local flavors. And I think that kind of brings me to what you can do when you are trying to help out and support like Latin America and Latin American bartenders, like, you know, using your travels to support these kind of projects. You know, how can you go visit an indigenous community or go visit local farms or anything like that instead of, you know, just going to the more traditional things? Get off the beaten path a little. Go try some palm wine or go, you know, go try something new and different traditional recipes and like show them that there is value to that. Also recommend and nominate other bars and bartenders than what might be around you. You know, go look at the lists of best bars in San Jose or Costa Rica or Colombia. Man, Cartagena is on fire right now with all their really cool bars, I think, and that's something to see. And I think we need to support that, encourage that. And then use your social media, talk about what you're seeing, especially when you're traveling, like document it, share it, you know, something like what I'm doing, like kind of showing you guys my adventure and my journey into making my kind of bartending sustainable and having hopefully a great social impact, and help marginalized groups with advanced support and normalization. So man, Latin America can be really challenging for women still. Like as Cory mentioned, I'm told I'm one of 3 female bar owners here in Latin America. I want that to change. So this is an event done by a bar that's called Selvatica in San Jose, Costa Rica, called Flower Power, and it's all about like hiring women bartenders, hiring female designers to work on the flyers, hiring photographers to cover the event that are female, as one example of something that we can do and we will continue to do.
I do have one question for you, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
It's a question about ice. It's actually quite interesting and something I never would have thought about. But are restaurants, bars, venues generally able to produce their own ice, or are they getting it commercially? And then it says, other thoughts or differences with ice in Costa Rica than what we're used to in the States. So is there other things there that is different from here?
Yeah, that's a really great question, actually, because I think if you have traveled to Latin America, I mean, in Asia, I understand that there are really solid ice programs and stuff going on, but in Latin America, I don't think that has taken off so much. I mean, Mexico more, but from what I've seen in Central America and South America, not as much, unfortunately, except maybe Carnival, which is an amazing ice room in Peru, which is awesome. But when you go to a normal hotel, they'll just have a crappy ice machine. There might be some people producing like their own like large king cubes and that sort of thing, but it's a really new process. But one thing that was like a great hack for me, which I discovered, is there are still ice factories here all over the place. So you can go to the ice factory, buy a large block of perfectly processed ice, and then, you know, cut it to the size that you need, which is something that we are introducing and working towards. But yes, you know, many all-inclusive resorts just have the, you know, basic kind of
the chips.
Exactly. So yeah, that they do a lot of shaved ice too, which is I think a cool thing. There's like a traditional thing that you can find on the beach, which is like with just shaved ice. It's called a Churchill. I don't know why. And you'll find it with like little layers of syrups and different flavors on it, and like powdered milk and condensed milk and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's something that you can really commonly find as well.
Awesome. That sounds delicious.
Pretty
I'll
good.
have it right now, please. Thank you. That was the last question that so far, obviously.
Perfect. Oh, that was a lot of information, right? I hope you guys thought it was interesting.
No, I think that, I mean, I'm starting to see a trend whenever I'm doing these Portland Cocktail Week distance learning things, is everyone has a common theme, and it really kind of goes back to sustainability. A lot of the people that are doing these, and I think that it's something that the bartending community is slowly kind of coming together to do. But I mean, now we just have to get consumers to do it.
Totally.
It's a tough road. I do have another question though. How have the locals taken to modern cocktails? Was there a learning curve?
Yes, great question. So I think I mentioned this to you, Cory, that when I first showed up at this Hotel Belmar bar, where I'm supposed to be doing their first cocktail program, first one that I know of in the country, you know, I'm like, I'm a bartender, and they're like, so what? What do you do? I'm like, oh, I'm here to make cocktails. And they're like, so you make pina coladas? Or like, there's just, at least I could say in Costa Rica, I think the cocktail culture kind of got stuck and didn't advance in the way that gastronomy had advanced. I'm talking, I've been here 9 years now, so this was a while ago. So now I think people are kind of getting the hang of it and understanding it a lot better. But yeah, at first it was a culture of shots and beers, you know what I mean? So trying to explain to people, you know, the processes and how we were producing these like really lovely ingredients, and why I'm using this like kind of funky, spicy liquor instead of, you know, some common ingredient that they might know. That was a learning curve, and it was really challenging. We still do get a lot of tourists in the bar, but I think I am really happy with the past 2 years how that the switch has really happened for locals.
Yeah, I would imagine that it's kind of like years ago, it was like where you would go to a tourist destination and they would give you could order a pina colada, a beer, a shot. Some of the drinks would come with no ice. You know what I mean? Like it's like it's starting to mold into something different is what it sounds like, which is cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm proud of how far the Costa Rican cocktail scene and the rest of Latin America has come in the past decade. It's really cool to see, you know, so many names on like the top lists and winning awards, and it's great.
Well, I don't see any other questions coming through, but if anybody has any other questions, please pop them in there and we can get them to me for Liz. But before that, I mean, this has been such a plethora of information. Sustainability is a huge deal, not only to a lot of liquor producers, but bartenders now too. So I appreciate you and all of your knowledge. It's been very enlightening. And now I just want to go out of my country to your country to drink the cocktails and enjoy the weather and the jungle.
No, I'd love to host you, but it's a little complicated right now, right?
100%. Soon, maybe soon. Who knows?
But at least I feel like you guys got to come over to Costa Rica and like at least check out some fun ingredients and see what's happening. So it, you know, it takes you out of the ordinary a little bit.
Totally. Well, I don't see any more questions coming through. So is there anything else that any more knowledge you'd like to pass off before we end?
I think that's it. Follow me, guys. I'm Miss Liz Furlong on Instagram, and if you want to check out the bar, it's Bebedero CR. There you can check it out on the slide. And I have a project that's called La Sociedad del Cocktail, which you guys are welcome to follow too. That's basically directed at Central American bartenders. It's a free training project basically for bartenders in Central America. So feel free to follow along and see what we get up to.
Well, I mean, thank you guys for coming today, and thank you, Liz, for, again, as I said, all of your knowledge. It's quite impressive, and you're quite impressive. So, and I think everyone has the same sentiment. So, thank you again for all of this. And when I can get there, I'll be there, and I'll let you know.
Good. I can't wait.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for all the support.
No problem, and thank you again. And we'll see everybody soon. Have a good weekend. And again, if you have any questions for Liz, I'm sure that you could send her a message through Instagram. If anything pops into your head and you just were curious, send her a message on Instagram. I'm sure that she would be happy to answer questions. And same with me. You guys can follow me at Ancho Hancho. And if you have any questions about Ancho Reyes or Montelobos, please feel free to get in touch with me. But all have a great weekend, and I'll talk with everybody soon. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
And the live stream is out. I feel like we learned so much.
That was a lot. I loved it. It was like, I was like this the whole time.